white people were frequently making it out unscathed. There was a picture, two pictures juxtaposed to each other in the last couple of days after the horrific mass shooting events, where a white man who we knew had killed 19 people at that time was gently being held by a police officer with his hand upon the small of his back and gently on his shoulder. And the other side was, that man had killed 19 people that we knew of, was Eric Garner, who was had engaged in a civil infraction that he should have gotten a ticket for, with 7 or 8 police officers strangling him to death. So what we have is a really unfair, unjust system. And I was just tired. And I said, rather than yelling at the television, I was going to shut up and do something. And so what's interesting about being DA, unlike a state rep, a congresswoman or man, US senator, state senator, you must be a lawyer to be the DA. So I felt like I was duty bound as somebody who had actually gone to law school and passed the bar. So, I plotted that. We were successful. It was very, very grueling. I can answer whatever questions you have. I was lucky. I had some wonderful women that were running at the same time. Liz Miranda and I are in the same sorority. We've known each other for a while. So being able to kind of commiserate with her. Ayanna, of course, had already knocked down so many doors in the Boston City Council and had the run of her life that was happening. Many people doubted her. I'm sure not many people in this room, but certainly many people in the establishment doubted her. Getting calls from her during my process was wonderful. And then Nika, who I didn't know before this, but my headquarters was on the corner of her headquarters. So she would be walking home every night at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night in JP, and I'd be finishing up what I was doing. And even though we didn't know each other, we'd occasionally just walk outside and hug each other and then say, have a good day, we'll see you tomorrow. So we won. We were, like most black women, nobody supported us. Everyone doubted us. And as usual, we persevered, right? So with 5 people in the race, I was told the black vote would split itself, because there were 2 other black candidates. The progressive vote would split itself, the women's vote would split itself. If I gave up every time somebody told me something negative, I would not be sitting here as your DA. So we won with 42% of the vote in a 5-person Democratic primary, and then we won with over 80% of the vote against a Republican in the general. And then the best way I can describe it is, it's an all-you-can-eat pie eating contest where the prize is more pie, which you don't want at that point, right? So you're exhausted when you win the primary. You then had a challenger. Remember, Nika and Ayanna didn't have a challenger. Liz ultimately didn't have one either, I believe. So we're all celebrating, but I'm like, I gotta get to work, right? I have somebody who's opposing me. And then what happened was we had a transition team. We actually put people of color and people that had touched the criminal justice system on the transition team, and all the newspapers were like, are you crazy? This is awful. Because of course they love the system exactly the way it is when it works for them and their children, but not for us and ours. And I like reminding people this is a venue, this is an area where we are overrepresented in prison, in jail, right? But we are significantly underrepresented in who makes the decisions about whether or not we go there. So for me, it is a completely autonomous role. Unlike the mayor, who has the check and balance of the Boston City Council or their city council, or even strong mayors that have a city manager or something else, or the governor, the attorney general and myself report to no one but the voters. And so I don't think a lot of people recognize that. I will never say I think I snuck in. The ACLU was very clear about what a difference a DA makes. They had done a lot of work. I was very honest about who I was going to be when I came in here. that I was going to be speaking all the time about wealth-based disparities and race-based disparities, and not people of color. I'm talking about black and brown people, because, you know, there's too many other people looped into people of color that aren't impacted by the police or getting killed every day or lining our jails and prisons. So, you know, and I am fully aware of the fact that people don't like hearing that and it makes them uncomfortable. I don't care. So that's sort of who I've been since I took office. I inherited an office of 300 people that had voted for somebody else. That was sure that that person was going to win. So again, unlike state reps, state senators, US Congress people, and US senators who have an aide or a staff of maybe 10 or 12 people that volunteer and help out, I have 300 people that are siloed. They're in different locations. I am responsible for who is in the Boston Police Homicide Unit. They don't get to be in that unit without the DA saying they can. I'm responsible for the State Police Homicide Unit and Narcotics Unit. They don't get to be in that unit unless I say they can. And so a lot of people don't like that. A lot of people in my role prior to me didn't care about who were in those units. It didn't matter that in the unsolved homicide unit, that's where people went who were going to retire, and it didn't, you know, were they good detectives or not? Well, they didn't care because it wasn't their families that had an unsolved homicide for 10, 12, 15, 20 years. And what I like to remind the police, and I'm proud of with my list of 15 crimes, low-level, non-serious crimes, that I said in the first instance, we aren't going to be asking for jail time. We're going to find out, why are you here? Do you have a mental health issue? Are you homeless? Do you have a substance use disorder? Were you being harassed by what happened to you? Let's slow down before we brand you with a criminal record. The police will be all over you for driving with a suspended license on the one hand, and will want to arrest you for that. And in the same house that they're knocking on that door about that, or a trespass, there's an unsolved murder that happened with that family. So why are you bothering me about a civil infraction or something that I can't even do time on, but you haven't asked me in 7 years about what happened to my cousin, my father, my uncle, my sister, somebody else. So those are the conversations. So my life is just filled with tension and wildly uncomfortable conversations, and I love it. It's something like my favorite thing. But I will say, I think I was put here to do this job. I really believe every circumstance I've come through, whether it's being the first woman or the first person of color in many of the other roles I've had at Massport, at the Mass Department of Transportation, at the T, all of the degrees that I got, but most importantly that I have 2 siblings that are incarcerated right now and a younger sister that's in recovery, and as a result of that, I'm the guardian of 2 of my nieces. So I have DCF in my life. Now, it's a different conversation because I'm a kinship foster parent or a guardian, but I know what it feels like to have them call up. They haven't filled out forms. The voucher isn't, right for my niece's school, or she's going to this camp and she can't start this day. Now, what's beautiful is who I am is I'm like, she's going to camp today. Now, I don't know who's watching her, but let me make something clear. Some forms need to be filled out and she will be at camp. It's different if someone's filed a 51A against you. You can't speak that way to them. But I understand how frustrating it is when systems don't work and don't speak to each other. And I believe that lived experience I have is really what's going to help me, along with Liz and Nika and Ayana, along with many other people, to try to change the system so that the people that are most impacted have a full-blown, multiple chairs at the table to talk to us about what we can do differently. So that's a little bit about me. I'd love to answer whatever questions you guys have of me, specifically about anything. Tayla.
So I would like for you to share your experience walking into the courthouse as the experience going through with your brother, and then your experience going through as an attorney, and how those differ in the same courthouse.
Yeah, so if anyone's been in court, there's usually either like a swing gate in the front or some opening where lawyers walk there. And like that's the one gift, I guess, we get for going to law school for 3 years and passing the bar, is that we get to sit in those 3 chairs and you guys get to sit right here. But my brother was arrested during the campaign. He had served 3 years in federal prison, came home, and got arrested pretty quickly after that. And I like reminding young and old people, you can absolutely love someone and not agree with the decisions that they make, and still love them and not feel shame about that. Like most family situations, I get to speak about my family. If anyone here said something, I would take my earrings off and we'd be fighting in the corner, right? But I get to say whatever I need to say about them, right? But I will love them and defend them. I'm never ashamed of who they are. I'm not proud of maybe the decisions they've made or the circumstances they found themselves in, and felt as though they had no other choice but to do X, Y, or Z. But I showed up in Somerville District Court. I had on a blazer, I think slacks, and like low shoes. And I walked in and walked up to sit where the lawyers sit. And a court officer like jumped up as though I had like brandished a weapon, sprinted over to me and was like, "You can't sit here." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because only lawyers can sit here." And I said, "Well, what about me makes you think I'm not a lawyer?" And he said, "Because I've never seen you before." And so I said, "So you've seen every lawyer?" Go that way, please. Right? So he was like, whatever. And, you know, I went in my bag, I took out my bar card, I showed it to him. And then ironically, my brother's public defender came in. So not even a prosecutor, because you know everyone loves pretending prosecutors hate everyone, and most of them do. But public defenders, it's not like they look like this room. The public defenders are all white too, right? They're overworked. They don't work in the community or live in the communities representing our brothers and sisters, and they're taking pleas and doing things that result in people having, you know, if you ask, we never offer pleas. We wait for people to come to us as the prosecution to say, would you be willing to whatever, right? And a lot of pleas happen before defense attorneys have seen evidence, many circumstances. So back to what happened was, criminal defense lawyer walks in, I'm sitting there and I say, "Are you representing Matthew Splain?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I said, "Oh, I'm his sister." And she said, "You can't sit here." And this is like within 5 minutes. So I'm like, "Why?" Right? So she says, "You have to be a lawyer to sit here." Again, what about me makes you think I'm not a lawyer? So as I got up to leave, the corrections officer tried to come over to be like, "Oh, you know, I'm sorry, I didn't," but it's the damage is done, right? And part of me understands completely the rage and anger and exhaustion that we all feel, right? Because the other thing I'm exhausted about is I don't care about white fragility. And I tell my father this all the time, and he is a white man, but he's married to a black woman, so he sort of like gets a little bit of a pass, right? But I'm like, I'm tired of your feelings and your hurtness, because you're dealing with fake emotions. I deal with this shit every day, right? So for me, nobody needs you to apologize. Just stop engaging in the behavior, or, you know, lead, follow, or get out of the way, right? To quote the Marine Corps, that's what we say: lead, follow, or get out of my way. So again, that's happened before. I've been in a beautiful suit at a huge law firm, carrying, you know, a Redwell, which is what we carry our files in as lawyers, walking behind a white partner in federal court. And a U.S. Marshal stood up and said, "The family sits over there," right? And I was like, well, when you see them, you tell them where they're gonna sit, right? Or the other thing that was amazing, when I was a federal prosecutor in the Moakley Courthouse, every time I walked into court, I'm not joking, like, it would happen 4 to 5 times a week, they would say, "Geez, where have you been?" And I'm like, who are you talking to? And they're like, "You're the interpreter, right?" So I'm like, no, Papo, I'm not. But anyways, so it's just, it's assumptions, right? They're not used to seeing us in places, and they feel entitled and emboldened to say whatever it is that they want, because that's how they were raised. You know, I don't know. So that's my story. Somebody else, go ahead, ma'am. Hi, sorry. Oh, yes.
But also, I'm curious about how you feel about what happened with the corrections officer that was injured and the sweeps that came after, and like what's going on over by whatever they call that.
Absolutely. So I've made it clear, and I think I was on the cover of the Globe recently about it. Nobody cared until it was a corrections officer that got assaulted, but we've all seen the video, right, of, I did say to the media, we are not going to blame a victim because there was an attack that happened, but they have spliced this video, right? They started when the mayhem began, right? The car is stopped. In another video I saw, I think words are exchanged. A man with a plastic bag walks up to the window, I believe slaps. Now this isn't me saying this is the DA. I've seen the same videos you have. I haven't been briefed. But I've been in Roxbury Division of Boston Municipal Court for 3 arraignments. The officer then gets out of the car and throws a punch, and that's when everything starts happening. And I don't know the time difference between each, but if there's violence, those individuals are going to have to answer as to what happened. But when you have a sweep, like a broom, if I swept this whole room, yeah, maybe a few of us would have warrants or a violent crime, but maybe the rest of you wouldn't. And what they're doing is conflating violent people with homeless people, with people with mental health issues, with people with substance use disorder. And so it's all everyone. And so what I've made very clear is the memo that I drafted is still in place, right? For the people that are violent and engaging in that behavior, we're gonna have to talk to you and find out. Even if you have mental health issues, even if you have a substance use disorder, if, as society, we care less about self-harm than we do, of course, about when the harm is turned onto us. And so whether, let's take it away from the corrections officer, there were 2 EMS workers that were attacked about 2 weeks before that. And there's a woman who we have asked to get a diagnosis from a medical professional as to whether she can stand trial. Whether she is housed in a facility for mental health issues or a correctional facility, I prefer her to get the mental health treatment she needs, but she's not going to be out in the community. So I have a problem with it because there were people that had no record whatsoever, or people that had an outstanding warrant that, okay, is that a problem? Yes. How long was the warrant outstanding for? I don't know the answer to this. If it's 7 years, nobody gives a goddamn about you. And what's the warrant for, right? If it's a warrant for murder, yes, hooray, we found this person. If it's a warrant for a trespass or a default because you didn't show up for a non-violent, non-serious crime, I'm not saying everyone goes free, but we are literally sweeping people up. And it was, I think, a poor choice of words. We've seen on the news stuff about people's wheelchairs being thrown away. The mayor called me this morning and has assured me that's not the case. But I just think we can be better at, even if that wheelchair was covered in feces and urine and needles and all this other stuff, could we get another wheelchair for this person? Like, are you serious? So it's people are lazy because it's not their people. And that's it, at the end of the day. And for me, my sister's been out there, right? Like I've seen my family, I've had to go and get my family there. So even though I get it, it's annoying, no one's saying it's oh, it's wonderful, let's just look the other way. And by the way, where do you think they're swept now? Dudley, right? So they're coming to Roxbury, where I live, right? And not to say that we don't want them here either, but what are we doing? Like, can we just get some beds and treatment and whatever? And that's why my comment was, there was an article about a $28 million refresh of Boston Common. That, okay, and I guess benches are like, white people are getting splinters, and I'm like, okay. Anyway, I don't know, but there's splinters on benches, and like trees need stuff. We're talking about human beings that need, and not to mention just substance use. I wake up every night, Monica's there with me, right? When she gets a notification from the Boston police about something that happened, I don't just get Boston, I get Revere, I get Chelsea, and I get Winthrop. And Revere just had 2 homicides. One was an officer involved shooting that we're investigating, and one was a carjacking that happened there. So my phone's ringing all the time. People are engaged in gun violence and violence. That's where I want our money to go, right? We can squat or walk by benches or get a splinter and like get a Band-Aid, but we can figure this other stuff out. I think that 28 million should go to something else.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I'm curious whether your ultimate, like even beyond your role as a DA, is your ultimate goal reform or abolition? And also you mentioned kind of treatment and things like that. But I've heard that there are some cases that are offered to be dismissed upon treatment. And how does that fit into kind of forcing someone into treatment when they're not ready? How does that work out?
So I am not an abolitionist. I don't think we should be building any new jails at all, period. Like, that's what I will say there. But I will also be honest, I've shown up at scenes where it's the people that are shooting look like they're family members in this room, and the people that are grieving look like there can be family members in this room. Like, this is our community that it's happening in, so we have to start thinking differently about accountability and what that looks like for violent crimes, right? I think we send people away for too long and we don't do enough with them when we have them there. That is what I will say. Abolitionists, I agree with their premise. I had the pleasure of being in Germany recently, where they have open prisons. They are able to vote even if they have committed a murder. So we were all from the United States, and we went to Germany and Portugal, and we kept asking questions because we're just so programmed to have restraint and not offer people, treat them with dignity, respect. So when we were like, well, so when they get out, how long do they have to till they can register to vote, or do they never get to vote? And so they were like, in German, like, wash, whatever they said. And then they were like, no, they vote there. And we're like, oh, they have to go back into the prison to vote because they are a felon and they can't vote out with us? And they're like, no, they vote while they're there. And it kept going back and forth because we couldn't conceive that they meant, oh wait, after they murder someone, they still get to vote? And they're like, well, they're still German, aren't they? And all of us were like, our heads exploded. But we're like, right, so felons don't get to vote. Jury are your peers, but you can't be on a jury if you have a felony, right? And then, so the trickle effect of all of this mass incarceration and all of these systems that were set up, as if anyone's seen 13th, right, that were set up right after the abolition of slavery to make sure that we kept black and brown people down, overwhelmingly black people at that time, right? So for me, I know you can't force treatment, but what we can do is offer it, right? And I will tell you that where it's gonna get tough is possession charge. And I've null crossed, meaning you don't even get arraigned, right? You don't get branded with a criminal record. But if it continues happening, what are we gonna do? Because the only alternative is I let you get arraigned and then probation forces you to do this or sends you to jail. I think we need to start having different conversations with people at the table who understand what we are doing now isn't working. And I think we need some health experts, not lawyers, not police, right? The first call I had after the corrections officer, I looked at the list of all the people, they're all law enforcement. So they're like, well, we arrest them, and then once they're arrested, and I'm like, can we get some mental health people here and some substance use disorders? Like, let's talk about treatment and beds. But everything is a nail to a hammer. And all the people on the phone I was with originally are hammers. I'm excited that Monday I'm meeting with the Users Union of Boston and then Boston Healthcare for the Homeless. and then some mental health professionals. And I'm gonna shut up and listen to what they are proposing we do and what they have been saying to whom, because I've never met with them before. But I will be a loud, shrill voice about the things we need to do differently. Hi.
I recently had an experience criminal justice system as a almost 37-year-old woman with no criminal record, accused of stealing my own bag, and how I got dragged for months and months. And then I had to take it to trial because I'm not going to pay restitution and do community service and be on probation for something I didn't do. So how does someone, well, thank God I have parents and I had some money to get a lawyer and all that stuff, but how can that stuff be reviewed? Just the amount of money it costs?
Was it in Suffolk County?
Yes, downtown.
I'll get your name before you leave. What? Who else? But see, that's what I'm talking about. It's like, which one, the man or the woman?
I had a array of judges.
So do you see what I'm talking about? Why people are so angry? Like, and then we have to curb our behavior. And if I told you how many people tell me that I need to smile more because I have a beautiful smile, which I do, okay? But I'm like, I'm angry. That's why I'm not smiling. And I'm not here to like coon it up with you about nonsense, right? Like, all right, who's next? Yes. Oh.
I just wanted to ask, how was your
Speak up. Yeah, I'll repeat the question.
how was your experience at Norfolk? Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing with the coalition of men that are there?
Yes. So one of the things that I did as a candidate was I was very vocal about the fact that my siblings, one of them was incarcerated at the time. Now both of my brothers are unfortunately incarcerated right now. So I met with some men at MCI Norfolk. They have an organization called the AACC. And I sat down and listened to them about violence and their lives and how they got to where they are right now and all the work they were doing. And I said I'd come back and meet with them again. And I met with them a few times while I was a candidate and promised them that when I won, I would meet with them once a month as the DA. And part of why I chose Norfolk is it's not close, right? And so it's not close. I said once a month because that's often. And I wanted to remind myself of the, I don't want to say annoyance because it's not an annoyance, but I'm reminded as, this attractive man here in this blue shirt is Detective Desmond. And no, I did not select him. He was waiting for me when I got there. This is one of my BPD details. I get driven around by a Boston police officer in a beautiful Tahoe. I don't have to drive anymore. And I am driven in a Tahoe out to Norfolk. It takes 45 minutes to an hour. I can do work in the back. I can be on phone calls. I show my badge as the DA and I'm brought in. And then I meet with them for about 2 hours and then I go home. And that's an inconvenience, right? And I'm the DA, right? The first time I showed up, they didn't believe I was the DA. I showed them my ID. They said, well, what is this? How are we to know that? I'm like, Google me, right? I don't know what to say, right? So, but it took a long time. I finally got in. They treated me really poorly that first time. It's gotten significantly better after I mentioned it to the governor and the Secretary of Public Safety. But imagine how they treat family, right? I'm the DA and they're treating me this way. I have a badge and so I get driven there and it's an hour. What if you don't have a car? How much is an Uber to Norfolk, right? And then, are you wearing the right clothes, right? Do you have a quarter to put in and turn the key? And if you forgot this ring or these earrings or an underwire bra, all of the rules that change all the time, or we didn't get that form, you're not on the list. It's horrible. And when we think about the fact that we're sending people away to try to get them better, and 95% of the people we send away return to us, we have to treat them better when they're there and allow them to come in contact with people that love them, right? Allow them to have visits with their family or friends or children. So, for me, I'm meeting with them again on Tuesday. We talk about my policies. They are voracious readers, so they've read all the articles. And what breaks my heart is they are brilliant and interesting and thoughtful men, many of whom are serving the rest of their life behind bars. And if they were out here, our community would be different. And I don't mean violent-wise, I mean they would be disrupting the violence with us. And I'm thinking about ways that I can utilize them from behind the wall to help with some of the things that people like Monica and myself and you are trying to say. We react too much to violence, right? We need to think strategically about how we're going to involve the very people that know fluently what happens to a young person at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 when they are wooed by individuals to join a group that has been failed at every single turn in their lives due to no fault of their own. We don't get to choose who we're born to. When you're a child, you don't get to choose where you live, what school you go to, and this isn't me talking, Boston Globe, our schools are segregated, right? Our housing authorities are not in the best of shape whatsoever. We have environmental racism that happens all the time. So no one's saying we're making excuses for them. Some of them made very bad choices, but some of them also found themselves in circumstances where there was no other alternative than to do what it is that they did, right? So I am fully aware of that. I speak very candidly with them and they speak very candidly back to me. But it is one of the better relationships I have as the DA, and it's something I will do for the next 3.5 years.
So one more question, guys, and then we gotta wrap up.
Hi. Super loud, I can't hear anything.
I just wanted to find out, will there ever be an opportunity for small nonprofit agencies, advocates to work with the Suffolk County's DA's office in regards to addressing issues pertaining to domestic violence and sexual assault and how it is things like violence in Boston?
Absolutely, yeah. So a couple of the things that I'm trying to do as the DA is have sort of survivor services. So there's victim witness advocates whose role is almost exclusively to when a violent attack happens and there's a victim, to walk you through procedurally what's going to happen in your case. They can, if you get a really good one, they might help you with a lot of other services you have. I don't think that's fair, right? Just because of the luck of the draw, you got X, you win and get all these services, but the luck of the draw, I get Y, and my person is like not returning my calls, not telling me, you know, the night of, do you need a place to sleep tonight? We can get you this, that, the other thing. Survivor services, I think we're gonna make sure that we are reaching out to different nonprofits for sure, or I can get your contact information and put you in touch with people. The other thing is we need some victim witness advocates that look like our victims, right? And that doesn't mean that hurt doesn't recognize hurt, right? Like game recognizes game, but I don't want somebody from my family that's only speaks Spanish or Haitian Creole or Cape Verdean Creole to be having language issues in addition to other things there. So we're making deliberate choices regarding who we're hiring, what language skills they have for victim witness advocates and for investigators. The other thing we're doing, guys, is we have 300 employees, 35,000 cases a year, $20 million budget. We have 28 cars, for example. We contract, and my predecessor, all of the contracts we had were in West Roxbury, because that's where he lived. We're gonna change that, and if we are arresting and prosecuting overwhelmingly in Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, then, you know, we're gonna be getting our food from those areas, right? Hopefully Black or brown owned business, women owned business, or just local businesses in the community that we are most often in. And remember, that includes Chelsea a lot as well. So I'll get your information, I'm getting her information, and if there's anything else, I'll be here for a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you. Make some noise, please, for DA Rollins.
I let her walk off the stage, I just have a question for her as well. How do you keep your cool in those situations? There are situations where we're confronted, right, with whether it's racism, gender discrimination. You know, you go to put your bag in first class and they're like, you don't belong here. Like, I can read home. So I know exactly where I'm supposed to be. So how do you keep your cool? How do you suggest people keep their cool in those suggestions and not escalate, but de-escalate with a lesson in it? I'm not sure.
No, I mean, I think it's hard, right? What's beautiful about, you know, I love reminding people, it's like, I'm not bossy, I'm the boss, right? So it's funny about, Desmond's gonna laugh because there are many, many times in the car when people will call me, and I hope there aren't children here, but I'll be like, what the fuck, are you kidding me? No, I'm not doing that shit, and hang up the phone, right? And he's like, who was that? And I'm like, oh, that was Representative so-and-so, or this. But my point is if it's something that's ridiculous, I think people need to be checked immediately. I need to be better. You know, I'm a first-time elected person. I still speak the way that I would normally speak. So I have to get a little less sweary, but I have no problem checking people immediately and saying, like, that's racist, I'm not dealing with it. Who's next, right? So, but we need to be better at calling it out, and the calmer you can stay, the more information you get, and then you need to blow it up on social media and get people involved.
Thank you, D.A. Rollins, I appreciate it.